invest wisely, you can bank easily, you can live joyfully, and you can also leave a lasting legacy. Do all of those things. And then you know what you could do beyond that. Tell us how you've used one of these elements to start to benefit, or think about how you can benefit from your Stanbic account. And we'll do what? 25,000 shillings give to you from Friday.
Hivo too.
Hivo.
Very good. Very good. So, Hussein, as we continue talking about, defending the Constitution, defending human rights, and people getting to know and to understand their rights as clearly spelled out in the Constitution, one of the things that you have to ask yourself, do people understand these things? It's been 14 years since this thing is in the letter of the Constitution, the supreme law of the land. Do the citizens know their rights?
I think in spirit, to a majority of Kenyans understand that they have rights. Social media has really helped. Of course, journalists have also come out very strongly in defense of the Constitution and doing massive public education on the Constitution and human rights in general. So I would say a large percentage of our population have a good understanding of human rights. For example, the right to demonstrate, which is under Article 37 of the Constitution of Kenya. They appreciate that, if they feel aggrieved, if they feel dissatisfied with the way things are, they have a right to air, their disappointment and share with others how they feel. But the letter, because there's the spirit and there's the letter. So in terms of the letter, I think we still have a lot to do in terms of letting them know, for instance, it is this article, it is this chapter in the Constitution, or it is this particular law, the Public Order Act, that, administers public activities. So, and that is not very, very worrying, because not everyone is a lawyer. You don't expect everyone to know every detail, but at least if they understand that they have these rights, then it's a good step. And we feel that where we have we've reached right now, we have that what we can call critical mass to push forward with reforms in this country. And that's why we are now mobilizing as much as we can, telling people we need to come out, you need to stand forward, you need to say no to these excesses that are happening in government, and hopefully that will realize change in our times, maybe, and we can then enjoy, a free and a democratic country that we all love, that is Kenya.
Who has the responsibility to create awareness among the people?
The responsibility falls on everyone, to be honest. There's no one individual person or one sector that, is charged with the responsibility of public education or maybe defending the Constitution. As a matter of fact, the Constitution in, I believe it's Article 3, Article 3 of the Constitution, it says, Article 3.1, every person has an obligation to respect, uphold, and defend the Constitution. Every person. It didn't say every state organ or every civil society actor or every journalist. It says every person. Actually, that means it even extends to beyond Kenyans, because you could have people in this country who are living with us, but they may not necessarily be Kenyans. Yeah. So it says every person has that obligation, to respect, uphold, and defend the Constitution. And in defending the Constitution, the Constitution includes Chapter 4, the Bill of Rights, So we have a duty and an obligation that is given to us by the Constitution to make sure that we uphold human rights, that we uphold the tenets of the Constitution, and that we abide by it.
Okay. That is upholding and adhering to and observing. I'm asking about teaching. Who has the responsibility for civic education and civic awareness about the rights? Is there any institution, any organ?
Yeah, Latif, that's what I'm saying. I mean, of course, you can point out and say there are certain individuals, there are certain sectors that have taken that responsibility of doing that. Civil society, for one. But, I mean, the media fraternity, They have a responsibility, like a program like this today at Spice FM. Basically, we are letting people understand what the Constitution is about, and teaching people, not teaching actually, but sharing with people out there. So yes, there are certain sectors that perhaps might have more responsibility, but it's still each and every one of us who has that obligation to share information about the Constitution, to teach about the Constitution, and to make sure people are conforming to the principles and ideals of the Constitution. But yes, I agree. We have civil society, we have media, we have the state that also has the obligation. We have the ministries and others who are charged with, making sure things are okay within communities. So, yeah. But in a nutshell, it's all of us.
What can happen? Because look, there's the Constitution, Khalid, and we talked about this maybe in the hour before you came. And looking at what, at the very least, let it be a guiding light in terms of what you're supposed to do, whether you're in a position of leadership, governance, or whether you are are a citizen not involved in leadership.
Yes.
But at the very least, everybody is involved in nationhood, nation building, nation management, and maintenance.
Correct.
Everybody's involved in that.
Correct.
So the Constitution should then serve as a guiding light. Now, if we can imagine that you put that aside, which I don't believe that you should live in a nation aside of the supreme law.
Yes.
But if we can park that for a moment and talk about some of, or even look at some of the issues that we struggle with today, for which a lot of your work has been involved in, that there are still very many instances where folks operate outside of the provisions of the Constitution. And we can call it criminal, we can call it breaking the law, whatever it is. But that existence is outside of what the provision of the Constitution has mandated. So when we talk about abductions, when we talk about atrocities, when we talk about extrajudicial killings, when we talk about the disappearances of people, just let's talk about from the last 5 months, right? How is it that someone can govern, or people can govern over a nation, and these things are happening in broad daylight?
Exactly.
And we still say that there is an abiding by the Constitution. It befuddles me. I don't get it.
There's absolutely zero abiding by the Constitution. And you know what makes it even worse? The Constitution itself obligates the state to ensure human rights. When you go to police or nyinyi watu wa human rights.
You guys.
Nyinyi watu wa human rights. And the Constitution has squarely placed that responsibility on the state. Article 21(1). It is a fundamental duty, not a duty, a fundamental duty of the state and every state organ. They could have said the state, because of course it includes, but for emphasis, so police wasiseme haikusema sisi, of the state and every state organ to observe, respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the rights and fundamental freedoms in the Bill of Rights. That is in the Constitution. It's not just a duty, it is a fundamental. They've been told you have 1,000 duties, and then there are those fundamental duties. So your fundamental duty as a state and every state organ is to defend the Bill of Rights. Sasa hapa hata haikusema the Constitution. It was specific to the Bill of Rights. So kama wewe ni polisi, hata kama wewe ni KBC, that's a state entity. Hata kama wewe ni ministry, wewe ni, I don't know, a government dispensary, it is a fundamental duty the Constitution has placed on you. So it really baffles, as you say it, when those state organs zenye zimekuwa obligated to actually defend the Bill of Rights, they are the ones that are outrightly violating those rights. Extrajudicial killings. You have a responsibility as IPOA, for example. Those pictures and videos, the good thing about Gen Zs is they don't just talk. They give you evidence. They even do the work for you. Wanakuambia huyu ni fulani, hata mtoto wake anasoma shule hii, ako class 4, mwalimu wake anaitwa hivi, huyo mwalimu wake bwana yake ndio huyu. If you know, they give you everything. And not a single officer has been held to account. 61 lives lost in the minimum, at least the ones we were present. Tuko na postmortem reports zao, tuko na burial permits, the ones we can say for sure were killed. 61, but I'm sure there are many others. You know, people were afraid those days even to say mtu wangu ameuliwa kwa maandamano, because they were fearful the police will come for them. Nyinyi ni watu wa maandamano. So there are many others who are just buried. Muslims, for example, they need to bury immediately. Wanajua wakipiga report mwili itachukuliwa, sijui postmortem, sijui nini. So there are many others out there. But the president, the best he can say is, mimi sijui kama mtu ako na list anipatie. And you are the leader of the state. You are supposed to be a good example. Now you are the inspector general, acting inspector general, unaitwa kotini to come and explain a disappearance. 7 times you are being summoned. I mean, what kind of a government do we have in place that does not respect the constitution? And when people say we want change, you start saying, oh, sijui watu wetu, huyu reverend bishop ameongea hivi ni kabila hii, mbona hawakuongea. I mean, we have to change this country, and these are the reasons why we are saying that change must come.
Are you saying that the change has not come?
The change has not yet fully been realized. That's what I say. If we were there, we wouldn't see these disappearances happening. I mean, we were just discussing Kenya is supposed to be a safe haven for people who are running away from. Sasa tunaambiwa Kiza Besigye probably was abducted. The Turkish guys, the Ethiopian Tekle Michael. You know, Kenyan forces, Kenyan security agencies are aiding rogue governments in arresting critics who are demanding change in their countries. People come to Kenya because they think, oh, look at these guys, they are protesting, they are able to speak out, and our image is like up there internationally. And people are rushing here because they feel they will get the support, that they will have their comrades, that they will stand firmly together to bring change in Africa, in the world. And then our government goes and arrests, and then, I don't know, any PS justifies and says, oh, unajua sijui ni serikali. A lot of crap. Seriously. I mean, we have to be serious about what's happening in this country. And we can't just keep quiet.
There's something that must be said along the same lines of what you're saying about where we are in terms of human rights compared to the other. The examples we compare ourselves with, we shouldn't actually, because they're bad examples.
Yeah, agreed.
The beauty, inadvertently, here I'm speaking, this is tongue in cheek here. The fact that you have this pushback from people in authority who seem doggedly determined to abrogate the constitution. Determined. It's like they will find ways around it, and even go to the point of even changing the laws within parliament. I think the thing that it does for us, at least in my mind, that is the best that could happen.
Yeah.
We see with clarity the sort of leaders we have. With clarity. There is no ifs and buts and pretenses. You see. That's number one.
Correct.
Number two, you also understand how the constitution works. How? Because you can see it being abrogated. If, as you gave the example, a high court can issue a warrant, a summons, not a warrant, and somebody whose duty, whose office is actually to uphold, that's what they do. His job is to oversee the observance of the law.
Yes.
Goes against it blatantly. Now, the lessons that are inherent there are many. And it brings to the fore just the level of disregard that those who are in leadership, because someone doesn't do that unless they know nothing will happen to me.
Impunity.
Yes. So it tells you, now, we have a duty ourselves. Do we want to put up with this any longer? Because if something that concerns you, the citizenry, is being treated in such a callous manner, it means it is you, the citizenry, who's being treated in that manner.
Exactly.
Now, is this something you're willing to put up with?
Definitely not. That's why change must come. The law makes us equal. If others feel they're above the law, wewe mwenyewe kazi yako, you operate through summons. You summon people to come to you.
Yes, you do.
To get statements, that's your job. And you are being summoned. and you refuse to go. And what has happened to that guy?
He is the boss.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
I mean, you think this is a problem? There's a guy in Nakuru who led thugs. Yes, he's a police officer to go into War Memorial Hospital and remove the patients who are in beds. I mean, that one for me took people who are sick. You are removing them from their beds
and taking them where?
No, getting them out.
They're getting them out of hospital. You don't care where they
What?
go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really?
He was
How come I
summoned.
didn't see that?
He was summoned by the court.
Remember them War Memorial?
Yeah.
Actually.
He was summoned. He also refused to go. You know, you look at that and you wonder, what on earth are we seeing here?
I mean, that's just
It's just going to the extremes.
yeah.
When I was asking about who bears the responsibility to educate the citizens about the Constitution and particularly the Bill of Rights, is because many times when you think about rights, we look at rights from that historical perspective of what has been amplified before, in terms of state excesses, particularly in the enforcement of law and order,
Law, yeah.
right? Arbitrary arrests, executions, kidnappings, abductions, and all those, and this and the other. But then we forget all these other rights that are contained in the Constitution.
Yeah.
For example, the economic and social rights.
Yes.
And today we were talking, yesterday was World Toilet Day. How many people in this country, in Nairobi alone, don't have access to toilet facilities?
Toilets, yeah.
It's a right in the Constitution. It's enshrined in the Constitution. We have signed SDGs. It's SDG number 6.
Yeah.
We
It's
shall ensure
Article
people have-
43 actually in the Constitution. Yeah.
Yes, we shall ensure people have access to sanitation and
Yes.
water by 2030. We are getting closer. We don't have that. If you think about the right to education, every child in this Kenya has a right to basic education.
Yeah.
How many children are actually enjoying the right to basic education? Was it yesterday again? We were reviewing a story in the Standard where 20% and above of those that sit KCPE do not end up in Form 4. Over 200,000
Wow.
of those that sit KCPE do not end up in KCSE.
I thought they said
4
the
years
transition.
It's 100%.
It's 100%
100%.
transition. It's just the same way that education is free.
So
what
there's a
happened?
100%
They drop out of
transition.
school?
What happens to 200,000
Yes.
in those 4 years
Yes.
into fourth form? What has happened to their right to basic education?
Education. Yeah.
And what happened
We
to
don't
free-
talk about that.
What happened to free education?
We talk about right now the transition into CBC. Grade 7 spent an entire term last year without learning. They are going into grade 9. How do we know
Who
whether
makes up for that?
the kind of
Yeah.
what happened to their right to basic education, right to accessing healthcare services? We don't even amplify those ones loudly enough. Right to a clean and safe environment. All these things are also other rights
Yeah.
that are constitutionally guaranteed in the Constitution. But, they just appear like, it's one of those
No
things.
big
It's
Yeah.
a government to see that you can get a
You
right
see,
to representation.
Yes.
There are people who have gone for 2.5 years without
Yes.
representation in the National
because there's
Assembly
no IBC.
or in the County Assembly.
Right to have your case heard in court. There are people who are on remand.
Access to justice.
Access to justice is a
Article
right.
48. Yeah.
There are people who've been on remand. No hearing, no charge.
Essentially, you've been forgotten.
You've been forgotten.
Just-
I
in
was
the
at
annals of the system.
industrial area remand prison yesterday. There's someone who's been there for 9 years. Remand. 9 years.
Remand.
Remand. Can you imagine that on remand? And this is what we're saying. You see, an autocracy perpetuates impunity. So the police don't feel like they have to abide by the law. They don't feel like this is the court. I'll be jailed if I don't, respond to the summons. They know the person who is, me, the president is okay. I've talked to him. I don't need to go. Then you don't care. These are clear signs of an autocracy. If it's a democracy is governed by law. The law makes us all equal. No one is above the law, and we all respect the law. That's why law becomes extremely important, because whatever I get, he gets, she gets, and we are all the same. But ikiwa wewe unaona mimi regime policing, we don't respond to the law, we respond to an individual mwenye ametutuma, mwenye anatuambia. So nyinyi wengine, whatever you will say, however you will do it, shauri yenu. Mimi, as long as this guy, I'm okay with him, you know, we can't use swear words and stuff like that, but hizo zingine zote kaeni kando. That is a very dangerous trend. And yes, we acknowledge, and I agree with you that you can't compare yourself with, you have to compare yourself with the best.
Yes.
And Sisi, we are far from the best. We are far from the best, and we need to do quite a lot. Particularly, kuna, you know, sectors kama za politics, sectors za security, we are doing extremely poorly. Socio-economic, Article 43 of the Constitution. You know, Kenyans, do they even know you have a right to emergency medical treatment? Leo hii ukikatwa bleeding profusely, ukimbia kwa hospitali wanakwambia deposit. Kwanza sijui ufanye hivi. I think it's Papa Shirandula who died akiwa anangoja kukuwa taken to hospital because the family at that time just rushed him to hospital siku za COVID. And these are basic rights, as you say. Basic rights, emergency medical treatment. Any hospital being put up should be able to address that. But it's not there. So I agree that we still have a lot of work to do. That's why we cannot relent.
Khalid, I feel very strongly that there's a power in speaking out some of these
Definitely.
things. I think the weakness lies in the apathy and keeping quiet. I think there's power untold in raising voices over these things over and over and over again until it takes on a sickly nature. However, who sets the tone? And I think it sounds like a really obvious question or even an obvious answer. But there has to be somebody setting the rhythm for some of these things to be done and done right. Who is that?
I think when it comes to human rights, it's clear. It should be the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, who are releasing, I think, a report today, if I'm not wrong, the state of human rights in the country. I think I saw something like that they would be doing that. The Kenya National Commission on Human Rights is supposed to guide that discussion. But we know what is happening with most of these commissions, Latif, that you mentioned. They're only getting administration costs, their salaries. They have zero money to do their work because they're funded by the state. So what the state wants to do is to tell people, go to IPOA. But IPOA can't even go to town, from their office to town. They're given money, salary, you're given rent so that you are there. But to go out and do the work, zero funds for programs. The same for the Kenya Human Rights Commission and others. You're just supposed to exist. You are there and people can be referred
So they
to
can
you.
say there's a commission.
Yes, but hiyo si kazi yetu. There is IPOA, ni kazi yao, they're investigating and all that. And this is what we're saying. I mean, things have to change. Things have to change. I'm very proud of the Gen Zs, what they've done, and they've showed people that actually we can demand for change and it can come. And we need to do more. And this time round, I believe it's everyone. It's Gen zote. Kuanzia ile ya kwanza hata sijui ilikuwa inaitwa aje, naambiwa zilianza 1920s sijui to what, I don't know, they're called boomers or I don't know what, but now we have to speak out. And I'm glad people like Khalef Khalifa, people like Willy Mutunga, I think I saw Kabando, you know, the older generation, hata wao wanasema we are joining in this discussion. It has to be all of us.
Kabando haweko kwa hiyo age, usimgeshe sana.
Sasa
Kabando is younger than CT.
I mean your benchmark.
akina Khaminwa.
Hussein Khalid, thank you very much for joining
Thank
us.
you.
Hussein Khalid, the CEO of Vocal Africa and a nominee for next week's Human Rights Defenders Awards. Thank you for tuning in to Kenya's biggest conversation. We always enjoy your presence. See you again tomorrow.
Asante
10
sana.
a.m.
Yeah.